A single afternoon spent planting can ripple through centuries. Rhubarb neglected in a back corner will feed families for 20 years. Asparagus crowns wait 3 years, then fill spring tables for decades. But most gardens die out with their gardeners. The real secret to feeding your grandchildren isn't replanting every spring, it is uncovering the 12 perennial foods that quietly outlive us, turning ordinary hands into legacy builders. The stakes are bigger than a single season, and what stands in your soil could rewrite what family means. So, which plants earn a place in a future you'll never see? Eleanor kneels in the shade, hands caked with cool soil, splitting a rhubarb crown she first planted in her 20s. The original patch has outlasted 2 family dogs, 4 moves, and a career's worth of busy seasons. Now, with a quick twist and a gentle tug, she hands off a chunk to her granddaughter. That is all it takes, one afternoon, a spade, and a promise that this plant will still be sending up tart red stalks when the next generation is old enough to bake their first pie. Rhubarb is stubborn in the best way. Once settled, it shrugs off neglect, cold snaps, even weeks of drought. It does not need replanting. Every 5 years or so, the crowns can be divided, each chunk growing into a new plant, ready to start its own decades-long run. One patch becomes 2, then 4, and soon the whole neighborhood can trace their spring desserts back to that first gift. Horseradish, lurking at the garden's edge, is even harder to get rid of. A single root, forgotten in the ground, will send up fresh leaves year after year. Gardeners joke that it is nearly unkillable. Dig it up for a spicy harvest in the fall, and any sliver left behind simply regenerates. Families have been pulling roots from the same patch for a century, passing down not just the plant, but the ritual of grating it into a fiery condiment for holiday dinners. It asks almost nothing in return, just a little space and patience. Egyptian walking onions have their own way of sticking around. Instead of waiting for someone to replant them, they handle the job themselves. Each summer, clusters of tiny bulbs form at the top of the stalks. When they get heavy enough, the stalks bend over, dropping the bulbils onto fresh soil. The onions quite literally walk across the garden, planting themselves anew each year. Once started, a single clump can provide green shoots in spring, bulbs for storage, and a steady supply of fresh onions for decades. There is no need to remember to plant more. The onions handle their own succession. These are the quick wins of perennial gardening. One afternoon's labor can shape the menu for a generation. There is reassurance in knowing that even if life gets busy or plans change, these plants keep going. They bridge the years between childhood and old age, between grandparents and grandchildren. The real legacy is not just in the food, but in the quiet confidence that long after the first planting, the harvest will still arrive, reliable, generous, and deeply rooted in family memory. Sam's patch of asparagus looks like nothing special for the first 3 springs. The crowns are planted deep, roots splayed like octopus arms, then buried and forgotten. Each April, thin spears poke up, tempting but off limits. The rule is strict: do not harvest, not yet. Those first shoots must grow tall and feathery, turning the bed into a tangle of green ferns all summer. Underground, the real work is happening. Every frond that waves in the breeze is feeding the roots, building reserves for the years ahead. Neighbors walk by and wonder why Sam does not just plant carrots or lettuce, something that pays out fast. But Sam keeps tending the asparagus bed, mulching and weeding, resisting the urge to cut a single stalk. By the 3rd spring, patience is finally rewarded. The spears come up thick and strong, ready for the first real harvest. A sharp knife, a gentle twist, and breakfast is on the table. Eggs and fresh asparagus, the kind that snaps with a sweet crunch. The difference is immediate. Unlike annual crops that demand new seeds and new work every year, asparagus is a one-time investment. After that 3-year wait, the same crowns will push up spears each spring for 2, even 3 decades. Some beds, started by a long-gone gardener, still produce after 30 years, each season's harvest a quiet echo of the original planting. Sam's hands know the rhythm now. Cut in the cool of the morning, stop picking when the spears thin out, let the ferns regrow to recharge the roots. Over time, the bed spreads. Crowns multiply underground, sending new shoots up in places Sam never planted. The cycle continues, slow and steady. There is no rush. Every spring brings another round of harvests, and the work gets easier as the years pass. This is not the thrill of a quick return. It is a lesson in waiting, in trusting that effort given today will feed many tomorrows. Sam's asparagus patch stands as proof that some rewards are worth the wait, a harvest measured not in weeks, but in decades. Jonah stands in the middle of a city lot that, just 3 years ago, was nothing but gravel and weeds. Now the ground is thick with life, some of it planted on purpose, some of it determined to stay whether he wants it or not. At the back fence, a patch of Jerusalem artichokes towers overhead, their yellow flowers nodding in the breeze. Jonah digs a spade into the soil, lifts a clump, and the earth falls away to reveal knobby, pale tubers. These roots have a stubborn reputation. Plant them once, and they keep coming back, year after year, even if you forget about them. It is the kind of persistence that kept families fed through hard times. During the Dust Bowl, when regular crops failed, people scavenged for these tubers in abandoned fields, digging them up through winter and spring. The harvest window stretches from the first frost until the ground freezes, and the plants barely notice drought or neglect. But there is a catch. Miss a single tuber, and you will have a patch forever. Some call them a survival crop. Others call them a headache. In parts of the Midwest, they are so relentless that state officials warn against planting them near wild riverbanks. For Jonah, they are a safety net, a food that does not quit, even when his schedule does. Just a few steps away, the raspberry canes are sending up new shoots. Every spring, runners snake out underground, popping up in places Jonah never intended. Raspberries reward patience with sweet, sun-warmed fruit, but they have their own agenda. Left unchecked, they will march across the lot, turning paths into thickets. Each cane lives only a couple of years, but the patch itself is nearly immortal, constantly renewing from below. Jonah learned to keep a sharp shovel handy, slicing off runners that stray too far, gifting rooted canes to neighbors who want their own patch. It is a balance between abundance and control. The reward is generous. Come June, the canes hang heavy with berries, enough for breakfasts, jam jars, and a few handfuls eaten right there, juice dripping down his arm. Blackberries are even bolder. Where raspberries spread politely, blackberries take the offensive. Their arching canes root wherever they touch the ground, forming dense, thorny walls. In the Pacific Northwest, old homesteads vanish under blackberry brambles that outlast every fence and shed. Jonah respects their power. He keeps his patch tightly corralled, pruning hard each winter, never letting a stray cane escape. The berries are worth the trouble, deep purple and bursting with flavor, but he knows that a single season of neglect could turn his garden into a fortress of thorns. These plants do not just survive, they advance. Some gardeners see them as troublemakers, others as insurance. For Jonah, they are a lesson in humility. The same qualities that make these crops a risk, their refusal to die and their hunger for space, are what make them reliable, year after year. In a world where so much depends on constant effort, these survivor spreaders ask almost nothing and give back more than he can ever use. But they demand respect. A garden that feeds the next generation has to be managed with an eye on the future, knowing that what you plant today might outlive your best intentions. A row of blueberry bushes stretches along the edge of a backyard, their branches heavy with clusters of deep blue fruit. Each bush stands as a quiet witness to the passing years. Blueberries, once established, can produce for half a century or more. Some of the oldest patches in Maine and Michigan still yield fruit. their roots tangled with family stories and childhood summers spent with purple-stained fingers. The work is simple. Prune a little in late winter, mulch with pine needles, and let the rain do the rest. Over time, the bushes thicken and spread, turning a forgotten corner into a place where neighbors gather with baskets and children dart between the rows, chasing the season's first ripe berry. A little farther down the path, the air grows sweet and sharp near the grape arbor. Grapevines ask for patience in the beginning, 3, maybe 5 years before they offer a true harvest. But what they give in return is measured in generations. A single vine, if tended, can live for a century. Some European vineyards still harvest grapes from vines planted before the United States was a country. The Zamatovka vine in Slovenia is over 400 years old, its twisted trunk still sending out new shoots each spring. In backyards across North America, grape arbors become living landmarks. Each year, the canopy grows denser, dappling the ground in green shade, inviting family and friends to linger beneath the leaves. The harvest is a communal event, clusters snipped, juice dripping, laughter echoing into dusk. The vines themselves seem to improve with age, their roots reaching deeper, their fruit growing sweeter as the years pass. At the far end of the garden, a fig tree stands in a patch of sun, its broad leaves casting cool shadows on the ground. Figs thrive on neglect, content in poor soil and dry summers. Once settled, a fig can live for centuries. In warm climates, it produces 2 crops each year, a first flush in early summer, then another as autumn approaches. Some Mediterranean fig trees have watched over villages for more than 200 years, their branches still heavy with fruit. The tree's resilience is legendary, surviving drought, storms, even the occasional frost. For families, the fig becomes a symbol of endurance and abundance. Children climb its limbs for a better view, elders gather fallen fruit for jam, and every season brings a new generation to the table. In the middle of all this stands a vineyard steward, hands roughened by decades of pruning and harvest. He remembers planting the first vine as a young man, unsure if it would survive the winter. Now he walks the rows with his grandson, pointing out the thickened trunks and the way the roots grip the earth. He knows he will not see the last harvest from these vines, but he takes comfort in the thought that someone he loves will. The work he began decades ago has grown into a gathering place, a space where stories are shared, where time slows, and where the fruits of patience are measured in laughter and long, golden afternoons. These are not just plants, they are invitations to linger, to celebrate, and to leave something behind that grows sweeter with every passing year. A young parent stands at the edge of a backyard, cradling a bare root apple sapling. Maria, whose own orchard rows have seen decades of harvests, offers advice from across the fence. The sapling's roots are spread wide in the hole, soil tucked around them with careful hands. Standard apple trees planted like this can live 80 to 100 years, outlasting the person who first set them in the ground. Even the smaller dwarf varieties promise 2 or 3 decades of fruit, enough for a child to grow up and return with children of their own. When mature, a single apple tree can yield more than 400 pounds in a season, turning one planting into baskets of fruit, jars of sauce, and shelves of cider year after year. Beside the apple, a hazelnut bush waits its turn. Unlike towering trees, hazelnuts stay shrub-sized, easy to fit into a modest yard. Once established, each bush can produce up to 25 pounds of nuts every year, with a productive life stretching 40 or 50 years. There is little fuss after the first seasons, just patience, the occasional pruning, and the quiet satisfaction of watching the shrubs fill out and bear. Hazelnuts do not demand much, but they give generously, their harvests arriving long after the first planter's hair has gone gray. Maria smiles as the new parent presses soil around the roots. The orchard does not begin with a grand design. It starts with a single tree, a single bush, and the hope that someone, someday, will remember who planted them. Each addition is a quiet promise: food, shade, and stories for the ones who come next. A veteran orchardist walks the edge of a hillside, boots sinking into moss where the ground slopes beneath a pair of ancient trunks. These are chestnut and black walnut, trees that outlast the memory of who first set them here. The chestnut, once the backbone of American forests, was nearly wiped out by blight in the early 1900s. Now, thanks to decades of restoration, blight-resistant hybrids are returning to fields and woodlots. Each new planting carries hope that the old abundance might come back. A single chestnut tree, once mature, drops 50 to 100 pounds of nuts each fall, enough to feed a family and fill the pockets of children on chilly mornings. In Europe, chestnut groves have outlived empires, and in the US, some of the oldest trees still stand as silent witnesses to centuries of harvests. Nearby, a black walnut tree stretches its limbs skyward, casting a deep shade that keeps the undergrowth sparse. The orchardist runs a hand along the dark, ridged bark, recalling how the nuts fall in late autumn, their green husks staining fingers brown. Each mature black walnut can produce 50 to 80 pounds of nuts a year. But the value does not end with food. Walnut wood, dense and beautifully grained, is prized for furniture and instrument making. Timber from a single tree after a century or two can pay for a grandchild's education or a new roof. The tree's presence shapes the land too. Walnut roots release juglone, a compound that keeps competing plants at bay, a living reminder that legacy sometimes means drawing boundaries as well as offering gifts. The orchardist speaks quietly about stewardship. Planting a nut tree is an act of faith, a decision made not for immediate reward but for generations yet unseen. A chestnut or walnut takes years to settle in, but once established, it becomes a fixture, outliving storms, droughts, and even the people who tend it. The true harvest is measured not only in bushels or board feet, but in the knowledge that a single afternoon's work can echo across centuries, feeding and sheltering descendants whose names you will never know. Right now, nearly half the world's calories come from annual crops, fragile, demanding, and vulnerable to disruption. Yet a single walnut or fig tree planted today can outlast nations and feed generations you will never meet. The future of food security may depend on choices made in one quiet afternoon. Legacy grows in silence until it feeds the world. What would you plant for those you will never know?